Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things and welcome to another video. And today I'm joined by my husband Nick.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about some of his favourite books of all time. So over the last few days, in celebration of me having been on BookTube for 10 years, I've put up a few videos about my favourite books of all time. I did my favourite 10 books of all time and my favourite 10 authors of all time. But I thought it might be fun if we also went through some of Nick's favourite 10 books of all time. So we've got a list of some very good books.
It is the list I have compiled today. It may not be accurate.
I mean, we compiled a list like 2 weeks ago and then you compiled a different list today and then we amalgamated.
It's accurate as of time of recording.
Yeah, but you may change your mind.
Yeah.
Soon.
Almost immediately. Yeah.
That is to be fair how you do a list of favourite books. Yeah. Okay, right. So let's start with number 10. What is your 10th favourite?
So number 10, I think, is the only one we don't actually have a physical copy of. We've just been looking for it. But it is Excellent Women by Barbara Pym, which is a post-war, like 1950s book about an unmarried woman who's very involved in sort of local church politics, I suppose, and what happens when some rather more fashionable people move into the flat. I think it's beneath hers, but it might be above hers. But move into one of the adjacent flats to her flat, and it's a really, I think it's a really great sort of examination of an unexamined life and a sort of a look at the people in sort of post-war English society who maybe weren't given a lot of attention.
Yeah, and it is really fantastic. I have also read it and can confirm that it is an excellent book.
It is also extremely funny. Barbara Pym's got an excellent sense of humour, I think.
Barbara Pym's a good author to go to, I think, if you like Jane Austen. She's got quite a similar sort of wry wit, I would say.
Book number 9 is a children's book, so it is The Gollums Eye by Jonathan Stroud. And this is sort of standing in for the whole Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathan Stroud, which I absolutely loved as a sort of 12, 13-year-old. It's about an alternative modern-day London which is run by magicians whose power derives from their ability to summon spirits from another reality and sort of bind those spirits to their control. And the book is partly told from the perspective of a young magician called Nathaniel and partly from the perspective of the spirit that he summons called Bartimaeus.
And the spirit is very, very fun and has a really excellent narrative voice.
Yeah, the spirit is extremely not on board with what's going on, and Bartimaeus has an excellent sense of humour as well, and it's got a number of footnotes in the book where Bartimaeus gives his view on what's going on. And certainly as a teenager, it was just incredibly funny, and I really enjoyed it.
And I didn't read them as a kid. I read them when I was like probably 21, 22, and I really enjoyed them too as an adult. Like they're just really they're just really good fun.
Yeah, and Jonathan Stroud's a great writer.
Yeah.
And really, this could, in some respects, have been any of the 3 books in the trilogy. And I think there's also a prequel, which I've read as well.
Is this the third one or the second?
This is the second one.
Yeah,
I think, really generally speaking, second books in trilogies are always the best. But
more on that later.
So Jonathan Stroud, I think, more recently wrote the Lockwood and Co. books, and I think they were turned into a Netflix series. I haven't watched it.
No.
But I think, yeah, he's an excellent writer and really well worth a look if you're looking for something. Sort of, I suppose, is it middle grade or?
Yeah, it's probably like the older end of middle grade.
Yeah.
I would say it's not really YA, is it?
I feel like it's pre-YA actually.
Yeah.
Like I think it might
have
been packaged as YA if it had been written in a different era.
And what do you have at number 8?
Number 8, I have a book you'll probably approve of, which is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, which I think I read this time last year, or it would have been October last year.
Yeah, you read it for October. Was it last year or the year before? I can't remember.
Maybe it was the year before actually, but reasonably recently. Absolutely loved it. I think it's really fantastic. I can't believe it took me this long to get around to it.
I'm sorry I got you to read other Victorian books before I told you to read Wuthering Heights.
So it follows the sort of horrifying entanglement of Heathcliff and Cathy. You probably know the story of Wuthering Heights, but
and this was also in my top 10 2 days ago, so you will have heard it discussed on this channel very recently. This is one of our joint favourites.
Yes,
such a great book.
Absolutely awful. Everyone deserves everything they get, but it's also kind of fascinating,
and it's so masterfully written as well, and like so clever. And there's something so compelling and immersive about reading about these terrible people doing kind of terrible things.
Yeah,
it's great.
I kind of feel sort of ancient. Like I feel like a lot of Victorian novels follow not the same formula, but like there's kind of a Victorian novel formula, and this feels more like a Greek tragedy that a Victorian happened to write. It's pretty dark. So number 7 is Pyreazi by Susanna Clarke, which
Good
I think
choice.
I also read in the last couple of years.
Yeah, quite recently.
Yeah, reasonably
That's another
recently.
one I told you to read.
A number of them are your recommendations. This follows. How would you describe Pyreazi? It's quite difficult to.
You're following a man who lives in a world of rooms, and he has never left this world, and there's only one other person in this world who he sees sometimes, and everything is quite strange, and you follow him in his world until you slowly start to understand what's going on.
Yeah, it's a really excellent. I don't really know how to describe it. It's just a great book about
it's just really good.
other worlds, and I suppose like it's not exactly magic realist, but like
it's got a sort of not exactly dreamlike
Yeah.
quality, but it's obviously fantastical in some ways, but it also it just really, really works. It's so clever. It's very short and so readable. And I feel like its themes and the way it looks are almost like identity and like your understanding of yourself.
it's nothing like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but you can see how someone who came up with Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell also came up with this book, I suppose is what I would say. I do also like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but I think this is head and shoulders above that. You probably put that on your top 10, didn't you?
No. My top 10 was very full. I love Susanna Clarke a lot, but I had many books competing for the top 10.
Up next is this is actually a children's book, which is The Power of Three by Diana Wynne Jones. And I suppose it's somewhat standing in for everything Diana Wynne Jones has ever written, because I think she's really great. And I feel like she's not as well known and well loved as she should be. I think she's quite well known, but...
And I think she was very popular like when she was writing, but I think she has fallen out of fashion a bit, even though her books are great.
Yeah.
You obviously read a lot by her when you were a kid, but I didn't. But I have actually read quite a lot by her as an adult, a good sort of 6 to 10 books, and I really, really enjoyed them all. I think she's a great writer.
I think she writes absolutely fantastic children's stories, and they're never condescending. They're always... Some of them are quite dark and quite sort of... bleak in a way, but also I think they're just really lovely, and she has such a wonderful imagination, and The Power of Three is my favourite. It's got a really great setting where sort of different sort of, I suppose you call them tribal groupings, live in these mounds on a moor, and it's all about the politics between these mounds and 3 children who are the children of one of the chiefs of one of these mounds, and there are also a number of fantastical creatures, including giants. And as the story unfolds, you maybe realise that the world is more familiar than you might think it is. And it's really great.
It is, yeah. It's really fun and very clever. And yeah, she's just such a great writer, isn't she?
At number 5, we've got Agatha Christie's And Then There Went On, which, again, is kind of standing in for many Agatha Christie's. We've been working our way through them over the last couple of years, so the Poirots specifically, but we have also listened to a few of the standalones, including And Then There Went On. While I ummed and ahed about which one actually deserves to go on the list, I think And Then There Went On is the best one. It is really dark and chilling. But,
it's so tense.
Yeah. And I read it having already seen an adaptation of it, so I kind of knew what was going on, and I still thought it was fantastic. Like, even knowing basically all of the sort of ins and outs, or most of the ins and outs already, it's just an incredibly like harrowing read in some respects, but yeah.
And her characterisation as well. I mean, I just always think that with all of Agatha Christie, but I think in And Then There Were None, especially like the characterisation and the psychology of all the different characters and all of these people who are dislikable in lots of different ways. Like, it's just really clever.
It's an absolutely preposterous setup that she makes you believe in absolutely completely, that people would behave in the way that they do in the book. It's fantastic.
And the setup, actually, which we didn't explain, is that 10 people are summoned to an island under false pretenses, and when they arrive there, they realise that they've been brought there to be killed because all of them were responsible for the death of someone in their past. And everything kind of goes on from there, and it's just very... grim, but it's so well done. Right, number 4.
Next? We have Act of Oblivion by Robert Harris. There was always going to be a Robert Harris book on the list. I've not read everything that he's come out with, but I've read a number of his books, and I think I've loved all of Robert Harris's stuff. I think the other contender was the Cicero trilogy, and one of those books, but I think ultimately Act of Oblivion I think is just the best, and certainly as a standalone book is just absolutely fantastic. So this is a historical fiction book set in the period after the English Civil War and the interregnum. So it's just after the Restoration, and Charles II has come to the throne, and it follows a character called Richard Naylor, who is in charge of hunting down the regicides, who are the people who were responsible for the death of Charles I. And also it follows two of the regicides, which are, I think it's Ned Whalley and William Gough, who are flee across the Atlantic to America. And it's about the hunt for these men, so you see it from both perspectives, and it's really fantastic. And you just, again, completely believe in the psychology of all these people, even though their sort of moral references are all just completely alien to us.
Well, I think that's one of the things I love most about Act of Oblivion, is that Robert Harris is just so cleverly able to make you completely understand the worldview of these people with worldviews that are very, very alien to yours.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating. I mean, that's probably my favourite, well, it is definitely my favourite book by Robert Harris too, and I like his books a lot, and Act of Oblivion is just incredible.
Absolutely knockout final paragraph as well.
Yeah, the ending is so good. So good.
Number 3 is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I first read this, I think it's probably going on for 15 years ago. I absolutely love it. I love Oscar Wilde. I think he's got an incredible turn of phrase. He's obviously incredibly funny, but also he was very good at seeing some of the absurdities of sort of late Victorian society, and indeed many of the absurdities of any society and how it functions. And I think there's so much in this book that is incredibly cutting, but also it does manage to be quite a compelling horror story, I think. It's not perfect. I think probably if you were talking about best books, Wuthering Heights is probably a better book than this, but I think there's something incredibly compelling about it that I think is just great, and it's got so much sort of wit, but it's still really grim ultimately. Second place is a book that is, I suppose, strictly speaking, is a children's book, but I actually think is sort of worth reading, whatever age you are, and it's The Subtle Knife by Philip Pullman. So I think with the other series on the list, I sort of picked out my favourite book, but sort of any of the books in the series could sort of have stood in, but actually this is my absolute favourite book in his Dark Material series. Owing to a quirk of fate, I happened to read this book first, so I didn't read The Northern Lights until a reasonably long time after I read this book. So I read The Subtle Knife, The Amber Spyglass, and then went back and read The Northern Lights, which has always given me a slightly different perspective on the trilogy, I think, to everyone else.
Yeah, certainly Northern Lights starts with one character, and then The Subtle Knife starts with another character, and then you meet the character from the first book later on. So if you read the books in order, the character from the first book is the main character, but because you started with the second book, your main character is almost the other character.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So anyway, this book follows a young boy called Will who lives in the sort of south of England, and after sort of being forced to run away from his home for various reasons, he discovers a window that leads him through into another world, which is a sort of Italian-style city called Cittagazze, where there are various threats and wonders that he discovers. It's an absolutely fantastic book. It looks at so much about sort of morality and philosophy, but it is also just a great story. Absolutely love it. No notes.
It is very good. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Is it my favourite book in his Dark Materials? I don't know. I do really love The Amber Spyglass.
I also love I love all of them. I think they're a fantastic trilogy. Series, yeah. I think The Amber Spyglass, I do actually think that basically it's really hard to make the best book in a trilogy the third book in a trilogy. Robert Harris might manage it with Dictator, but I think generally speaking, the second book, The Empire Strikes Back, is always the best bit. Like you get to know the characters, you've established the stakes, and then you can mess with the stakes and sort of suddenly change the balance, and they have to deal with a different kind of adversity.
You see, I think lots of people find the second book in a series to be a bit like saggy middle, but I don't know. No,
I definitely think that the second, I think the middle of a trilogy has the most
it's got a lot of potential.
The most potential, because you've got you've got a status quo you can disrupt, but also you can end on a cliffhanger. So you've got the whole range of stuff that you can do, and I think that is enormously powerful. I would say The Amber Spyglass is probably the least good of the three, and I do think it's very good, but I actually think
the Mulefa.
I love the Mulefa. I love so much about The Amber Spyglass.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad book by any means. I think it ends the trilogy really well.
Yeah.
But I think it's got a lot to do. And I think The Subtle Knife is much more focused and really benefits from it. And I think, to be fair, The Northern Lights also is very focused. And I think maybe if I'd started there, I would feel slightly differently between the two books. But I think I think Will's story in The Subtle Knife is just perfect.
Right. First place.
So first place, at least for the moment, is Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I just love this book. I suppose for most of the books I've chosen, the real standout thing that appeals to me is a psychologically interesting character. And I think that Stevens is such a perfect examination of a particular kind of life and a particular kind of person and a particular sort of moment in history that is just so heartbreaking. But also, it is hopeful, I think, at the end, and I think it's got a fantastic ending. I should say the book follows a character called Stevens, who is a butler at one of a grand country house that is now owned by an American, and it is about him basically taking a road trip to visit someone that he once knew and is hoping to sort of re-establish a connection with. And throughout the course of his journey, we sort of see his recollections and get a sense of the ways in which Stephen's life hasn't maybe worked out how he expected, or he's subscribed to a particular moral code that hasn't maybe brought him the rewards that he was hoping for. And it's about him thinking about that. And it's a very introspective book, and I think it's brilliant. It's really masterful.
It is.
Yeah.
I agree. It is fantastic. So we had 2 books in common across my top 10 and your top 10. I assume you could guess what they are. I
mean, I'm assuming Wuthering Heights. I think you told me Wuthering Heights. Yeah. It must be Wuthering Heights. I don't know. Pyreazi, presumably? No. Act of Oblivion? No. Oh, and then there went on.
No.
Oh, I don't... What?
It was The Remains of the Day.
Oh, right, sorry.
No, I didn't have any Agatha Christie in my top 10 novels, so she was number 5 in my top 10 authors.
That's criminal.
Yeah, but I just... It's very hard to pick a top 10. There's a lot of books I love, you know. But I did have The Remains of the Day, because I do agree that it is a perfect, poignant, wonderful, wonderful novel.
Yeah. Where did you put it?
Not in the top 5, but I can't remember precisely where.
What was your top book? Was it Our Mutual Friend?
Obviously.
Yeah.
You don't need to ask me that. Yeah. What do you think my second favourite one was?
Your second favourite? I don't know. Pride and Prejudice?
Yes, well done. Can you guess the third place?
Might be a Gaskell. In North and South?
Well done. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's correct. I think that's right. Well done. Yeah, maybe Wuthering Heights was done before. I can't precisely remember now, but that sounds about right.
Were there any contemporary books in it?
There was The 13th Tale and The Watchmaker of Filigree Street. Okay. I was about to say In the Remains of the Day, but it's from the 80s. It's not a contemporary book.
Well.
But it wasn't from the 19th century.
If it's from less than 50 years ago, that's pretty good going for you.
I think those were the only 3 books not from... Yeah, but I had some honourable mentions, and my honourable mentions did include
some books from the previous century rather than
Kitchen and Passing, which are from the 20th century. Well, Kitchen's 80s, like Remains of the Day. So a lot of 19th century books, you know. What can I say?
I am aware.
Cool, I think that's all for now.
Yeah, let us know in the comments what your top 10 favourite books of all time are, and whether Katie's list or my list is more correct.
Thanks very much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with the final video of my week of videos every day. And yeah, that's all for now. I think everyone will be very pleased that you have 2 Victorian books in your top 10.
2 Victorian books, yeah.
Well done.
I was threatened with...